Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Fraser Doherty. I'm 22. I come from Edinburgh, and I'm the founder of Superjam. I definitely wouldn't pretend to be an expert in social media, and I don't have the tens and maybe hundreds of thousands of fans and followers that some of these guys have. But perhaps I was invited along, firstly, to share my story with you, the story of how I took my grandmother's secret jam recipe at the age of 14, and over the past 7 or 8 years have built a business supplying the big supermarkets, but also maybe to give you some thoughts on how social media can play a part in the running of an old-fashioned sort of a business like a jam company. And so my adventures in jam began at the age of 14 when I was visiting my gran, and she was making jam in the kitchen just in the same way as she had for as long as I can remember. That's a picture of my gran there. She's the one in the middle. And I got really excited about it and asked my gran to teach me how to make jam. And I was soon selling my homemade products door to door and at farmers markets and to little shops and on a website that I set up. After a while, the local newspaper wrote an article about me, and I found myself on page 3 of the Edinburgh Evening News, which probably just meant there wasn't very much happening in Edinburgh that day for something like that to make it into the paper. But following the excitement of being written about in the paper, I decided to leave school at 16, and I started working full-time in my parents' kitchen making jam every day. And I came up with a way of making jam 100% from fruit, without any sugar or anything artificial. And I decided to pitch my products to Waitrose at a Meet the Buyer Day. And Meet the Buyer Days I like to describe as the X factor of selling groceries to supermarkets. And hundreds of people show up and pitch their products. And Waitrose said that they loved the idea of making jam 100% from fruit, but that I would have to set up production in a factory and create a brand before they would think about giving it a shot. So we came up with this brand around a sort of comic book theme. And we had a lot of fun writing jokes, and we spoke about making a superhero costume for me, the Jam Boy, to wear at the launch of the whole thing. Unfortunately, Waitrose didn't think that was the greatest idea ever. And so we had another shot and came up with the packaging that we have today, which is very simple and modern and gets the message of our brand across. With a website and a blog. And thankfully, Waitrose agreed to give the products a shot in all of their stores about 4 years ago, which attracted a huge amount of media coverage. And I found myself being interviewed on GMTV and This Morning and BBC Breakfast, and even the biggest news show in China covered the story of this little Scottish guy getting his grand's jam into the big supermarkets. And so I decided to go on a rock and roll tour around all the Waitrose stores, handing out samples and signing jars of jam. And on the first day in one of the stores in Edinburgh, we sold about 1,500 jars of Super Jam, which was a great success. And we then went into Tesco and Asda and Morrison's, and we had a big party when we sold the 1,000th jar. I got invited to have dinner with Gordon Brown. The products got put into the National Museum of Scotland. My story was used as part of Orange's advertising, and the biggest promotion we did was we gave away a free jar of Super Jam to every reader of The Sun. And so my proudest moment of all was being able to share the front page of The Sun with Susan Boyle. I've gratefully received a number of awards, but something that I'm most proud of is having set up a charity, which we did about 2 years ago, running tea parties, which are completely free for elderly people who live on their own or in care homes. And we have about 120 of these tea parties every year. The biggest ones have about 600 people at them. And so I guess I've had an amazing adventure over the past few years, and in a sense, a lot of it has been made possible by social media and by the web. I've never worked for a traditional company, and so things like Facebook and Twitter and the blog and the website have all been hardwired into the way that I've built this whole thing. I'm not going to come here and say that YouTube and Facebook are the be-all and end-all of communicating with your customers. I think it's far more important that you take the time to talk to them on the phone and in person. But I'm definitely very excited about the idea that when something happens at Superjam, say we launch a new product or a new flavor or get into a new supermarket, everybody who cares about the brand knows about it right away, from the people who work in the factory to the people who put Superjam on their toast every morning to the supermarket buyers and everybody who volunteers at the tea party. I guess the internet's made it possible to have quite a meaningful conversation with the 15,000 or so people who who care about Superjam, and that's not something that would have been possible for a grocery brand even just a few years ago. I guess it's created a sense of community, a sense that we're all in the same boat. It's a group of people that believe in something, maybe the idea of making jam healthier or the idea of putting a smile on the faces of thousands of elderly people. In a conventional company, when you want to take somebody on, you put an advert in the paper or maybe on monster.com and you try and find the person who's best qualified to do the job. For me, I've taken a look at all of the people that Superjam has a conversation with and tried to find the ones who are most excited about the brand, the people who write about us on their blogs and tell all their friends about us and volunteer to set up tea parties in their area. I'd go as far as to say that they are the people who love the brand, and some of them love it almost as much as I do. And I can't imagine anybody who'd be better to come and work for a company than somebody who buys a product and really believes in it themselves. Most of the people working at Superjam are visiting supermarket stores, handing out samples in the way that I did in the very beginning. And they've got all sorts of exciting things going on in their lives. They've maybe got kids or they're students, and I have to embrace that. I want to create a really flexible place to work where people aren't kind of being micromanaged. And so this is... no, I don't have a slide, never mind. There's a couple of things that I'm trying out along the lines of trying to get our consumers excited in the brand and trying to get them involved in how we run Superjam. And so when a customer comes across a little shop in their area that they think should be selling Superjam that doesn't, they can tell us all about it on this page on the website, and we'll get in touch with them, and if they place an order, we send some jam to the person who suggested it as a way of saying thank you. And that's a really simple idea, but we've been able to get thousands of suggestions of little shops all over the country that we could sell our products to, and we've got the products into a huge number of those stores. A bigger idea that I'm really excited about is letting consumers organise tea parties themselves completely independently of Superjam by collaborating with themselves on Facebook and Twitter and online. And once they've found a venue and some elderly people who want to come along, we send them a grant, maybe £100 to set one up in their area. And we've had about 50 tea parties that have been run by people meeting one another online, complete strangers, and setting them up in a community centre or a care home near where they live. And I guess if we really figure out how to use social media better to do that, we could have hundreds, maybe even thousands of events happening all over the country. And I think that's pretty amazing, really, and something that's only being made possible by social media. I guess that's kind of all I've really got time to share with you this evening. It's been a real pleasure to have come along. I guess there's a number of people that I should thank for making my story possible, not least, of course, my gran for teaching me how to make jam and inspiring the work that I do with the elderly. She's thankfully unaware of her intellectual property rights. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing what everybody else has got to say in the discussion we're going to have later on. So until then, thank you.